For many members of Generation Z, the world feels like a complex chessboard, dominated by the relentless interplay of greed, power, and control. As digital natives with access to more information than any previous generation, Gen Z scrutinizes the global order with a critical lens. Their judgments are shaped not only by textbooks and traditional media, but by first-hand accounts, social networks, and a flood of alternative perspectives. When looking at the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, this generation often sees a trio whose interests intersect in ways that perpetuate inequality, violence, and the consolidation of wealth and authority at the expense of justice and human dignity. Beginning with the United States, Gen Z frequently views the nation not just as a superpower, but as the world's self-appointed enforcer of capital and control. The narrative of America as a beacon of freedom is challenged by its history and ongoing patterns of military intervention. Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, for instance, are seen less as noble missions for democracy and more as campaigns driven by corporate and military interests, oil, and strategic dominance. Young people learn about the U.S. role in propping up dictatorships and destabilizing democracies around the globe, often in the name of fighting communism or terrorism, yet leaving behind lasting scars on the societies involved. This skepticism extends to the economic sphere. Gen Z is acutely aware of how American corporations exploit global resources, often outsourcing labor to countries with fewer protections, contributing to environmental destruction, and widening the gap between the rich and poor. They are quick to point out the contradictions between American rhetoric and reality, how democracy is invoked to justify intervention abroad, while systemic racism, gun violence, and income inequality persist at home. The climate crisis adds another layer, as many in Gen Z see the U.S. government and corporations as slow to act, often placing profit above planetary survival. Turning to Israel, Gen Z's perspective is shaped by a growing awareness of the realities of military occupation and surveillance. The conflict with Palestine is not viewed in simplistic terms of security or ancient enmity, but as a modern-day colonial project, propped up by vast sums of U.S. aid and weaponry. The Israeli state is seen as leveraging advanced technology, like facial recognition, drones, and border surveillance, not only to police Palestinians, but to develop innovations that are later exported to other governments, often those seeking to control or repress their own populations. This framing of Israel as a testing ground for surveillance and control technologies resonates deeply with Gen Z's broader concerns about privacy, authoritarianism, and the rise of the security state. Many young people see the expansion of settlements, the demolition of Palestinian homes, and the blockade of Gaza not as isolated incidents, but as part of a systematic campaign driven by settler greed and a desire to control land, water, and resources. The invocation of perpetual victimhood, they argue, is used to deflect legitimate criticism and maintain international support, especially from the United States. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, occupies a unique space in Gen Z's analysis. A kingdom flush with oil wealth, notorious for its repression, and yet eager to rebrand itself for a global audience. The murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, the ongoing war in Yemen, and the systematic crackdown on dissent are not footnotes, but central features of the regime's identity. For Gen Z, the spectacle of concerts, sporting events, and social reforms is often dismissed as sports washing, a strategy designed to distract from the monarchy's continued reliance on fossil fuels, censorship, and fear to maintain its grip on power. Despite a veneer of modernization, the fundamental nature of the Saudi regime is seen as unchanged. A corrupt monarchy backed by U.S. arms, money, and diplomatic protection. This support is seen as transactional, based on the kingdom's willingness to keep oil flowing and maintain regional stability on American terms. The disconnect between the West's professed values and its alliances with authoritarian rulers is a recurring theme in Gen Z's critique. So why does Gen Z see through the traditional narratives? The answer lies in their unprecedented access to global education and information. With the internet as their classroom, young people are exposed to voices and stories that mainstream media often overlook or sanitize. Social media platforms amplify first-hand accounts from activists, journalists, and ordinary people in conflict zones, making it harder for governments to control the narrative. Academic research and student movements further dissect the power alliances behind wars, resource grabs, and political repression. This generation does not view colonialism, capitalism, and authoritarianism as separate phenomena, but as interconnected systems. The relationship between the US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia is seen as mutually reinforcing, an axis of military, economic, and technological power that shapes global outcomes in favor of the few. Gen Z connects the dots, recognizing how arms sales, oil deals, and surveillance contracts tie these countries together, often at the expense of democracy, human rights, and the environment. Faced with these realities, Gen Z does not remain passive. They organize boycotts, such as the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, BDSE movement against Israel. They take to the streets and to social media, demanding accountability and transparency. They call out double standards in media coverage, questioning why Western outrage is so pronounced over conflicts like Ukraine, but muted when it comes to Yemen or Palestine. The demands of Gen Z are clear and uncompromising. Decolonization, demilitarization, and environmental justice must take precedence over profits and power politics. They insist on a world where human rights are not selective, where international law is not a tool for the powerful, and where the future is not mortgaged for short-term gain. Gen Z's perspective, sharpened by digital access and global solidarity, represents a profound challenge to the old order. They are not content to inherit a world defined by greed, violence, and control. They are determined to build one founded on justice, equality, and sustainability. And as their voices grow louder, the world has no choice but to listen. As you reflect on these perspectives, consider how Gen Z's critical approach to global power is shaping the way our world operates. Do you trust this new mindset to create a more just and equitable order? Or do you have concerns about its impact on existing systems? Your voice matters in this conversation. Share your thoughts, join the dialogue, and support efforts that align with your vision for a better, fairer future.